Hello and welcome to week 3 of my Beachcombing Blanket crochet along. I'm Eleonora, the designer behind Coastal Crochet, and all the details about this blanket can be found over on my blog, Coastal Crochet, and the links are in the description below. I've broken the tutorial down into smaller segments, so if you want help with the entire square, do follow the tutorials in order, but otherwise I've titled each tutorial to correspond with the round that it's there to accompany. And remember to have the written pattern with you as you work through the rounds. And I hope you find the tutorials helpful. So on to round 7, and it tells us to join yarn E to the back 2 loops of any stitch. So any stitch, insert your hook into the back 2 loops only and join yarn E. And it tells us to make 1 chain, which counts as the first double crochet US single crochet stitch of this next round. And then it tells us to do 1 double crochet US single crochet stitch into the next stitch, remembering to go into those back 2 loops only. So that's 1. And so now it tells us to miss the next 3 stitches, working 1 raised treble front, 2 chain, 1 raised treble front, all around the same half treble stitch from round 5, which is directly below the central stitch of the 3 missed stitches. That's quite a lot of instruction there, a lot of words, but I will hopefully be able to break that down for you and show you how to do that. It's much simpler than it sounds. So firstly, our raised treble front in the US is a front post double crochet. We did these stitches in week 1. They're simply raised stitches, so you work the treble stitch or the US double crochet as normal, but instead of going into a stitch, we're going to be going around the post of a stitch. So wrap your yarn around the hook once. Then we miss 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then in the stitch beneath, the central stitch of those 3 missed stitches. So here is stitch 1, here's stitch 2, here's stitch 3. The central one, stitch 2, and obviously these were half treble stitches, so the stitch sits just to the left of the sort of the top of the stitch. So here is 1, here is 2. So this is the stitch which we need to look directly beneath it. It's going into this stitch here, bearing in mind the cream is round 6, in the blue here is round 5, and that's where we want to go. So the central stitch of the 3 missed stitches is this one here. There's number 1, there's number 2, there's number 3. This is the central stitch. It's worked into this half treble here, and therefore we insert our hook around the stem of that half treble stitch, which is directly below the missed stitch, going from front to back, round to the front again, and then we work our raised treble front or front post double crochet, which is the treble stitch, US double crochet as normal, but going around the stem of that stitch. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that is the first raised treble front. If you look at the instructions and the pattern, it now tells us to do 2 chain, 1, 2, and then another raised treble front post double crochet around the same stitch. Much easier now to identify because it's the same stitch we just went around. Again, insert your hook from front to back, round to the front again, and work a second raised treble or front post double crochet stitch around that same stitch. And there we go, you've created a little bit of a V. And so then it tells us to do 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, remembering that we've missed 3 stitches. So if you look at the back of the work, we've missed 1, 2, 3. So the next stitch to go into is this one here. And we're remembering to go into the back 2 loops of that stitch. And remember we're working 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. So that's 1, and that's 2. And so now we continue, and again it's telling us to miss the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, miss the next 3 stitches, but again work in 1 raised treble front, 2 chain, 1 raised treble front, all around the same half treble stitch below from round 5. And it does give us a bit of an extra instruction here. It says leaving 3 half treble stitches in round 5 between the previous raised stitch and this one. So what that means is we are missing the next 3 stitches, wrap the yarn over the hook, ready to do your treble or US double crochet, miss this stitch, miss this stitch and miss this stitch, but below the middle stitch. So don't be afraid just to pull your work apart a bit to make it a bit more obvious. So 1, 2, it's this stitch here, and in the stitch which is directly below that second missed stitch, so that's this one, so around the stem of that stitch we're going to be inserting our hook. But it does give us the extra instruction. It says leaving 3 half treble stitches in round 5 between the previous raised stitch and this one. So this here is the previous raised stitch, and as you can see there's 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then this is the one that we're going around. So it's a little bit easier to identify that correct stitch going forward now. So insert your hook around the stem of that stitch, yarn over hook, pull round to the front, and just complete the treble US double crochet stitch as normal. So that's 1, and then obviously we're doing 2 chain, we're doing everything in the brackets around the same stitch, and then again 1 raised treble front or US front post double crochet around the same stitch. Obviously it's much easier to identify the second time. So go around that stitch and complete the treble US double crochet stitch as normal. It then tells us to repeat from star to the end. So look at the pattern, go back to where the star is, and then it's 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, remembering that we have those 3 stitches that we're missing. So there's a stitch coming out of there, miss 1, 2, 3, here's the next stitch to go into, and remember to go onto the back 2 loops only of that stitch. So that's 1 double crochet, US single crochet, and that's 2. And so now we're back to those instructions where we are missing the 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, but doing the raised treble or the front post double crochet into the stitch directly below the middle missed stitch. So it looks like it's this one here, but remember now it's easy to check whether that's the right stitch because there should be 3 half treble stitches between this one and the previous raised stitch. We can just check that. So there's the previous raised stitch. Pull the work apart a little bit, and as you can see there is 1, 2, 3 stitches between that raised stitch and this one here, so we know it's right. And then we work 2 chain and then another raised treble front or front post double crochet in the US around the same stitch. And there is the third one. And again, so we go back to where the star is and continue doing that all the way to the end. So I'm just on our final repeat. I've just done 2 double crochet US single crochet stitches, and I'm on the final set of raised stitches. So wrap your yarn over the hook to do your treble or US double crochet stitch as normal, but we're doing it as a raised stitch or a front post double crochet in the US around these stitches below. So there's the previous raised stitch, 1, 2, 3. There should be 3 stitches between this raised stitch and the next one. So there's the stitch to go around. Insert your hook front to back, around to the front again, and then just work your treble US double crochet stitch as normal. Make 2 chain and then another raised treble or front post double crochet around the same stitch, and then work your treble US double crochet stitch as normal. And that is the end of the round. We've repeated from star all the way to the end, and now we're at the end of the round. And if you see, it now tells us to slip stitch to the first chain, and that first chain we made counted as our first double crochet, US single crochet stitch, and that's where we need to crochet into. But remember, we'll have 3 stitches to miss behind the raised stitches we've just done. So there's 1, 2, 3, and that brings us nicely to this beginning chain, and slip stitch into that chain to close the round, and then fasten off. And so we're now at the end of round 7, and this is what it should be looking like. There should be 12 groups of raised stitches going around. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 groups of those raised stitches going around, and we can now move on to round 8. And if you look at round 8, it tells us to join yarn C into any of the 2 chain spaces in between the raised stitches. So where we've done our raised stitches, it's the 2 chain space between those raised stitches where we're joining yarn C. So insert your hook into any one of those 2 chain spaces between the raised stitches and join with yarn C. And then it tells us to make 3 chain, which counts as the first treble or US double crochet stitch of this next round. And if you look at the pattern, it says now to do 3 treble or 3 US double crochet into the same chain space. So the same chain space where you joined the yarn and worked your 3 chain, you do 3 treble US double crochet all into the same chain space. And so that's my first 3 into the first chain space. And then it says miss the next stitch. So miss this stitch, which is actually that raised stitch. Miss that stitch, but work 1 treble or US double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. And these are the little double crochet, single crochet stitches we made in round 7. There's 1, and there's 2. And then if you look at the pattern, it says miss the next stitch, which is this first raised stitch, and then work 4 treble or 4 US double crochet in the next 2 chain space. So miss this stitch, which brings us to this next chain space, and then in this chain space, that's where we're going to be working 4 treble or 4 US double crochet all into that same chain space. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it says miss the next stitch. So that's this one here, this raised one. Miss that one and work 1 treble US double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. That's 1 and that's 2. And then it says miss the next stitch, so miss this one here and repeat from start to end. So go back to where the star is in the pattern and you'll see that that's the 4 treble or 4 US double crochet all into the next chain space. And so do that and repeat what we've done, repeat from star all the way around to the end. So I've repeated that all the way around, just done 4 treble, 4 double crochet stitches into this chain space, miss this stitch, 1 treble US double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, miss the next stitch, and that's the final repeat. And so now we slip stitch to the top of the first 3 chain to join the round. And so that is the end of round 8, and this is what it should now be looking like. And there's 72 stitches going all the way around. It's always a good idea to count to check that you've got the right stitch count, and then you're all good to go for the next round. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thank you so much for watching. The subsequent rounds are in a separate tutorial, all available on my YouTube channel.